Hello troops, welcome back to the channel. My name's Ryan and I'm a former commando from the United Kingdom, and today we've got another update on Ukraine. We've got big news. There's a lot happening in certain areas on that northern flank, guys, and we're going to get into that today. There's a few things we want to talk about, but primarily I want to talk about what's been going on with regards to Russia's, aggression towards the counterattack. What are they doing in response to the counterattack? Now, the Russian army has focused its efforts on deterring the offensive at the armed forces and is actively launching air and missile strikes against Ukraine. So we're going to get straight into a bit of a map study with regards to what they've been doing. Now, as we can see today, there's not been too many changes from yesterday, except in the Kupiansk area. We've noticed, if we zoom in here, they've actually, they've crossed part of what would be the reservoir, although it doesn't look like it. It's technically still part of that river system, guys. But even when we look down to the southern region, we can see that they've actually started to push on through a little bit. So they are making more headway, not as much on the counteroffensive as we'd like to see, but there's a very strong reason as to why that isn't happening, guys. Now, if we just change our pen here, we can see up in this area here, annotated in blue, where I'm circling, that has been under heavy air and missile strikes from aircraft systems and other rocket systems that Russia is using. They're heavily bombarding these areas. My reason for it is, if you look at the area in question, there's road systems and train systems that use those lines, and they can be used logistically for resupply and stuff. So Russia is fighting back. They're smashing these areas here in particular with missiles and airstrikes. So and Kupiansk is also at the spotlight as well. They're getting hit heavily. Obviously, we've seen that they're pushing forward a little bit as well. So as a result, Russia is heavily trying to hit that area. I don't know if there's Ukraine troops in that vicinity. As of today, the update states that this area in Kupiansk is occupied. Obviously, they're pushing through there, but it is coming under some heavy bombardment in and around this area. Strategically, when you look at these areas, there's railway lines, there's main roads, there's built-up areas. So in terms of Ukraine, they can build a fortified defensive position there, but if it's going to be heavy bombarded by Russian attacks, by means of air and missile strikes, it's going to be hard for them to defend those areas if those missile strikes are accurate. Why is Russia using missile strikes specifically? Well, they're over the border now. This is effectively a new front line. So if we're looking at it logistically, we understand that the morale of a Russian soldier is pretty low now at the moment. So what they're resorting to is missile strikes. That's one thing that Russia likes to do anyway, because the soldiers haven't really got the morale to go back and fight Ukraine. I don't think they've got the will or the determination to be able to do that. They're quite spread out with how they're actually acting now. I believe they've even got prisoners fighting on the Russian side at this moment in time. So missile strikes is the best option for this, and hopefully Ukraine can push on through. I do believe we're seeing strikes in this region as well. I can't pronounce that. Gorokovita, I think it's pronounced, or near Borova. So yeah, we're seeing that, but that is, at the heart of the Oskil Reservoir. So strategically speaking, they're going to have a massive bridge there, and you're going to have built-up areas as well. So there's three main key areas among this here, along this new, I like to call this a new front line. And those three areas are, let me change this to red, around here, here, and around here. So three main areas. What have they all got in common? They're built up areas. They're key strategically to get across that. One is to get across the Oskil Reservoir. The other two are heavily populated areas and have real good supply routes and infrastructure by roads or by train line. That's really important militarily. You can't just bombard certain areas and hope to take back the land. You have to think logistics all the time. Something Russia hasn't really getting right, as we know, over the years, but it is obviously trying to focus its efforts, especially on this front line here. We have also seen bombardments to the south region, just south of the Oskil Reservoir, in and around this region here. I can't pronounce any of those names, so I'm not even going to pretend to. But we can see Ukraine is using almost like a fish hook around that Oskil Reservoir. Why is it important to control the southern part of that tip of the reservoir? Well, if you think about it as a feature, you know, with the momentum that Ukraine's been shown of recent, to push through the reservoir, if that wasn't there, they would have pushed, I believe, the Russians back even further. It would have been quite easy to do with the momentum that they've had. But the fact that that Oskil Reservoir is there has slowed their movement down as well. This is going to be a bit of a stalemate zone, I think, if we continue to see strikes by Russia in these positions, which we've seen there. It is going to hinder the movement of Ukraine as well, and it's potentially going to affect them logistically as well with resupply. So it's... yeah, there's a lot going on in these areas, guys. But we're just going to read some of the stuff from the report, and I think it's going to be quite pertinent information, okay? Now, in the Silverskina direction, the enemy concentrated 3 battalions of tactical groups and airborne units to cover Russian-Ukrainian border in the Bryansk and Kursk regions. In the Bryansk region, the enemy deployed S-300 V4 anti-aircraft missile diversion to 1 anti-aircraft missile divisions, okay? So they're focusing their efforts on anti-aircraft missile divisions, which tells me, you know, what they're wanting to do is, well, we want to stop that air capability. I believe the area in question where they're talking about is in and around this area here, if I'm not mistaken, if someone can let me know. But this area here, the fighting continues to be quite intense. I don't think Ukraine has any intention on taking this area heavily near the Kherson region just yet. I believe that they're going to focus a lot of the efforts on this northern region, gain some of this land back. But the missiles and the airstrikes that's occurring from Russia is going to hinder that at this moment in time. I think what we're going to see is a similar situation to what's going on in this area here, all the way down this front line here. We are seeing trench systems that have been formed. You know, it's very, very slow progress. We're seeing not a lot, quite frankly, from both sides. And I think that's happening for, you know, a few reasons, to be fair. And I'll annotate this in green. We've got Ukraine wanting to push these guys back this direction. In the trench systems, it's pretty slow. You know, you got to think strategically about it. Otherwise, these fortified positions from Russia, you know, you're just going to end up getting slaughtered effectively. So you've got, you know, fortified positions on both sides of this front line, both slugging it out, trying to fight over the land and gain traction, and no one's really gaining much at this moment in time. So what I believe is going to possibly happen, and it might be on Ukraine's agenda, is they want to take control of this north flank with the intention of potentially, and this is potentially, if they do take this, swiping, coming down from the north here, and taking them that way. So a bit of it's almost like a flank movement, but on a massive scale. Now, because of the nature of how big that would be and how obvious it would be, this whole region here, one or two things would happen. Well, Russia would have to focus its efforts slightly differently. I think they'd have to think about this area here, and they'd have to think about defending that area a lot more. So what we could see is Russia redeploying its units here and having a more active front line here as well to fight for the north. But as a result of that, I think these areas here would be weakened. Okay, I think we'd see a weakened version, a weakened front line here, and potentially given Ukraine the opportunity to be able to take that front line a little bit easier and fight them from both directions. But personally, I think they're going to come from the north, depending on how this rocket situation is going to go. But in other directions, the enemy launched an airstrike and carried out artillery fire in the areas of the settlements in the Morozova area. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. So what they're actually using here is artillery fire. Okay, and artillery is it's devastating at the best of times, guys. So under these circumstances, they're going to cause a lot of trouble. But moving back down to the south into these areas, we are seeing a little bit of progress in terms of Ukrainian pushing forward. these areas are going to be really, really hard to fight from. If we look at just the geography of these areas, all right, the Ukraine is pretty much surrounded in all directions here. So are they really going to get much movement from this point? I don't think so. I don't think we're going to see a lot of movement from them there. I think the movement is going to happen from the north. I think these areas are going to be really, really tough to not only attack from, but to defend as well, you know. Really, really tough indeed. So moving back into the Kharkiv, in that direction, the enemy's main efforts are focused on preventing the defense forces from advancing to the Ukraine border. The enemy fired intensively at the settlements in this region, you know, and the outskirts of Kharkiv as well. So it's not just on this front where we're seeing, let me zoom out a little bit here. It's not just here where we're seeing intense bombardment of Russian artillery and rocket systems and airstrikes and stuff. We're also seeing it across this border here. We're seeing it on sporadic locations all the way along this border, all with the intention on disrupting this place here, which is actively supporting and advancing the defensive forces from that position. We only read a few days ago that they're trying to push reserve forces through to defend these positions that Ukraine troops have already taken. So maybe Russia's thought about this, preempted it, and just started to bombard these enemy positions, preventing Ukraine from dropping off sporadic locations, their reservist troops at these locations to defend from, making it really, really hard for anything to progress from this point. What I think is going to happen, you know, potentially, if we don't see much more happening across these regions, is we're going to see a little bit of a stalemate, just like here, all right, just like here. So this could be something that happens really quick. Ukraine weathers the storm. Russia runs out of stockpiles to actively supply their the artillery systems and the rocket systems, the aircraft that is dropping all of these missiles and stuff. Because you've got to think about it logistically, these areas which have been taken by Ukraine, if we just look at these areas in particular, okay, they're easily defendable because of one reason, really. They're not just built up areas where you can get under hard cover for safety. These are areas that have main road systems and railway lines. Two very key points here. So, you know, you need to restock your troops with munitions, with fuel, with kit and equipment, morale. You know, you need to be able to get fresh troops on the ground, medical treatment back and forth. And you can do that from these positions. So the fact that Russia hasn't got these positions on that front line, that new front line there, tells me that, you know, how long can they resupply their men with in their rocket systems and you know, continue these strikes for? If they haven't got the ability to resupply, then it's not going to be too long before they run out, and then this bombardment, as long as Ukraine can weather the storm, is going to be pointless in my eyes. You know, hopefully that is the case for Ukraine, and if it is, what we could potentially see is more movement in this direction. Okay, hopefully this direction does become something that we can see materialize in the next coming weeks potentially. I think that's fair to say, you know, and this area could potentially be the new front line, and this area could hopefully be blue. You know, we see this area here, part of Ukraine. That would be great. That's another massive amount of land. There's multiple road systems on this and train systems that would be taken out. This area here is a bit of a hotspot logistically, and so is this, because if we look at the areas, you know, they're pretty much encompassed by major road systems and trains as well. So that's going to hinder the movement drastically for Russia if those areas are taken. And because there's nothing else major going on here road-wise and railway-wise, the next big thing from this bit here would be this area, I believe. So, you know, by taking this initial area, I think what you're going to see, if they be able to take this, you're getting over the geographical, logistical nightmare problems of the Oskil Reservoir. We're pushing on to this area here, which is going to be pretty easy to do, I think, because once you take the supply chain out, you know, Russia's going to have to retreat to an area where they can resupply from anyways, if that makes sense. So in Slovyansk, in that direction, the enemy fired from artillery and rocket-propelled grenade launchers in the area of Chepil. and those areas were, it was obviously quite devastating when you think about the enemy are firing artillery to hinder the movement within those areas for the Ukrainian troops. And also we're seeing that in the Bakhmut direction. During the day, apparently, and this is allegedly, the enemy fired artillery and rocket-propelled grenade launchers in the areas of Orkhov. I believe I've pronounced that right. So we're seeing multiple different forms of retaliation via Russia, whether it's airstrikes, whether it's RPGs. The enemy launched an airstrike near near those areas as well. And it's, yeah, there's a lot going on, guys. Russia is really trying their best now to fire back from this counteroffensive, that's for sure. And yeah, not much happening on the map in terms of land being taken, but a lot more war fighting is going on, a lot more bombardments from Russia. This is how it happened in the beginning of the war. There was a lot of there was a lot of artillery being dropped. There was a lot of ordnance being thrown around, and that seems to be picking up again. As long as Ukraine can hold them off and defend effectively against it, I do believe that Ukraine can weather the storm, so to speak. And if they can do that, it's only going to be good for Ukraine and bad for Russia. As simple as that. But my question to you is, what do you see the next major event in this whole war? What do you think it's going to be? If you could let me know in the comments, I'd really appreciate that. If you could stick around for another couple of minutes while I explain something very, very important that's going on in my life, I'd appreciate that also. Guys, I need you to view these videos and share them far and wide so we can get the views up. There's some YouTubers out there, and very, very, very good ones of that, guys that I'm a massive fan of, getting millions of views on these similar videos. So if you could share these videos far and wide, recommend them to other people, I'd really appreciate that. The reason we need the views is because I'm trying to get a talent manager so they can help me get onto a YouTube boxing event. There's plenty of these YouTubers getting involved in the YouTube boxing who I don't think would do very well against me. So I want to be able to represent all of the military veterans out there and all of the military guys and girls worldwide and get on the YouTube boxing scene, because I think, that scene deserves representation from us. And it gives you guys some more content. You get to see a different side to me. So if you could share the content, drop a comment below, smash the likes. You might not think it helps. It helps more than you'd ever know, guys. So if we can get these views up, I'd really appreciate that. If you like these updates, then let me know. And if you appreciate what I have to say, then let me know as well, guys. But first and foremost, I want to say this. Peace to Ukraine. I think they've been through a hell of a lot. If you are watching from Ukraine, then you are, I take my hat off to you, and I wish you guys the very best, okay? And I hope that this ends soon and swiftly, and I hope you guys are staying safe out there. But wherever you're watching from, peace and love, guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, and I'll see you very, very soon. Bye-bye.